Greetings. I am Murphy Daly, AV Veteran Project Manager and author for Rave Pubs. You are joining us for the AV Life.
Hey, this is Nancy Blanchard. I'm with Williams AV. Happy Thursday, everybody. And you are listening and watching the AV Life.
Hey, James here, writer for Higher Ed Digital Magazine, the IT and AV column, my board member, co-host of Master Programmer. Again, you Google me, find me, and you are watching and listening to the AV Life.
And I'm your host, Tim Van Wert, at T Van Wert and at the AV Life Pod from Rutgers University, from HETMA, from Higher Ed AV Media Group. And you are watching and listening to the AV Life. Okay. I'm going to apologize first off. I'm a little under the weather tonight. So
how dare you?
I know. It's just a cold. Don't worry. I'm throwing it out there. It's just a cold. I've been tested. I feel like this is like the new thing now. It's like you have to declare all the things you did. And then I just have a cold. So this is better than what I was last night at this time. So vitamins work. I am a strong supporter of natural vitamins, that sort of stuff. I will take vitamins until I feel better. So we're back and we have a returning guest. I could say that for you now, Richard. We didn't scare you away after that first episode of the season. We got Richard Mitchell from Biamp back with us. How are you, Richard?
Doing great. To be fair, I signed up for both of the sessions before the first one, so I was kind of on the hook to come back anyway. But anyway, Richard Mitchell, I'm the Higher Education Solutions Manager for the East for Biamp, and have like 18 years of higher education experience, 12 in AV, and 1 year of a hardware manufacturer solutions manager. So super excited to be here.
Awesome, and we are glad to have you. Sorry for that little delay there. So we're back. How's the crew doing? How are we all doing tonight?
Doing
Good.
well.
Yep.
Healthy.
Good.
We're healthy.
Yeah, I know. I'm bringing the plague apparently. So
I am putting my 13-year-old daughter to work. School is actually doing stuff again. Now that she's in 8th grade, she is doing the family business, which is debate. My husband was a major debater in high school and college, and now he's like, it's not even a question. She's going to do this.
Huh.
So, and
that's
you're like,
And she
but
wants
she was
to do
excited.
it?
Oh, yeah.
She's interested?
We
Okay.
are a house of rhetoric. We are a house that is constantly having to prove our points. So she's like, I want to do this. She's like ready to jump in. And they know what they're doing because they're making a lot of events. She went to the very first debate thing yesterday. And I said, what'd you like it? She goes, well, a quarter of the time we just derped around. I said, oh, yeah, but you loved that. So it's perfect. There's a bunch of other people who supposedly read a lot that are kind of derping around. And that's just exactly what she needs.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I don't know how I feel about that word derping.
She started it.
I'm currently looking it up. Hold on.
Yeah, that's like a that's a quick look up.
It's a 21st century upgrade to the word kind of duh. Derp.
Oh.
That's
So
my son's a fan of yeeting is his thing. So if like you're throwing something or getting rid of it real fast, you're yeeting it. And
the
I need
dog,
to get up on these words.
Right.
The dog is
Like I
also-
need a
Yeah.
cheat sheet or something, like equivalents to like 80s, 90s words would be great.
the dog is known as the derp as well
the dirt.
because she's a dog. She does derp.
See now derp in that using it that way. I've heard of it being used that way, like
Okay.
a little bit of a
But
goofy
the vowel version, the active form of derp is different. Okay.
of derping around. That sounds, I don't know. That does.
Like I said, she's a wordsmith.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's the thing. Words like it's crazy sometimes. Have you guys heard the term "kick the cat"?
Yes.
I've heard of screwing the pooch, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have not heard that term, and until one day at work, I was sitting there at work, and one of my coworkers, and this is a couple years ago, was asking what I was going to do the upcoming weekend. And I'm like, I'm not sure. He's like, oh, you're going to sit around and kick the cat. Well, I'm like, this didn't make sense. Didn't make sense, especially the way he used it. I'm like, I don't think he used it right. So I looked it up and I had to go back the next day. I'm like, yeah, you did not use that term right. And if, for anyone who doesn't know what the term kick the cat means, it means when you're frustrated, like if your boss is really hard on you, and what you do, you come home and you take it out on the lowest level being in your house, which is normally the cat. So
maybe you're underestimating this individual's level of frustration with his life.
No, he didn't. When I showed him the meaning, he's like, "Oh crap, I did not mean it that way." He didn't realize what the meaning was.
I've heard it from a
abuse.
Brit, kick the cat before.
Mm.
So I have a rule in my house, and I've done this with all my kids. Is anytime they give a word and I don't know what it is, I'll ask them. I'm like, "You know what the meaning is?" Because you cannot use a word unless you know what it means.
There you go. And I will say,
Fair.
my son did explain it to me when the first time he used it. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, you see this guy in this Minecraft thing? It's like he threw the TNT box or something like that. And he yeeted it. I'm like, oh, okay. All right.
God.
So he did understand what the meaning behind.
Yeah,
this new word
exactly.
is.
Yeah. And,
Okay,
and he
that's
he
fair.
had to explain it to me, which was interesting in and of itself. But yeah.
No, they have
It's-
their own
Yeah, we're
vocabulary.
at that age now, Tim.
Yeah.
Our kids are explaining things to us.
Well,
Yeah.
Back in my day, this is what we used.
it's at age 13, it's kind of they want to have their own language. And like,
Mm.
you
I
know,
think everyone,
that's fine.
every
I trust
generation
her.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
he got his from probably other teenagers through
Yeah.
YouTube.
Precocious. It's precocious.
Through YouTube. Like
Yep.
that's where it's because a YouTuber used it in one video, and then him and his friends all watched the same video, and so they all start using the same thing. So
Oh, yeah.
I just had this, you guys. You made me think of this, Tim. So I'm thinking about this particular moment in history. We're a house of history and rhetoric, right? So I was thinking like, okay, is this like this form of history? Is this like, you know, and then I realized I'm not looking at the whole of culture, because for the social media era of the whatever generation we're calling the alpha generation, James, these younger generation, my
Yep.
kid and the people like her age are like the period of time in France, the Sun King before the French Revolution, which ended dark, but because they are really hyper connected to each other, the I forget which Louis the whatever's, he had all of his social people living on, I think it was Versailles, but they were all living together. So they were super, super hyper connected to each other and very responsive to tiny little things. Oh, this person's wearing pink. This person has different shoes. This person, and they're super hyper connected to each other. So I thought, oh, that means things are actually moving faster for this set of people. I'm like, oh, this isn't. So I'm like, now I'm going to actually research the that period of time and go, what can I expect from these goofy little people and how they behave with one another? Are they going to wear gray wigs? It could happen.
It's coming
Are
back.
they?
well,
coming
I
back.
will.
Better yet, will they add to our AV nightmares?
Ah.
Yes.
Oh,
This is a night. The
Interesting.
vocabulary is a nightmare in and of itself.
Mm.
I will say that. But yes, I like your segue there, James.
Segue.
Segue. But before I am gonna kind of
But wait.
derail that, we'll go for our PM minute, and then we'll go into the nightmare. So we need to, we got to
Mm,
work ourselves into this, so we're gonna go to the PM minute, and then we'll
thank
see
you.
where the nightmare takes us.
Right. Let me remember. I had it figured out. What was it? Okay. One thing about being a project manager is it's kind of lonely because for each project, there is only one. There's a lot of people around. There's all the team doing it. There's the people asking for it. And there's the users, all the stakeholders. But the project manager is alone. It is a lonely thing to be the manager at the top of the project. But as a project manager, I don't have to do it alone. Feels like I do, but if I need to get some advice, I can go reach out and get perspective from other project managers. It's good to have some connections, go talk to other people, let me talk it through. Sometimes even just talking it through to somebody is really helpful, but I don't have to do it alone. It's important to keep that connection with other people from that perspective of project management and talk to those other project managers just to talk it through and have that project manager listen to you and give you some perspective and help you get something of what you need, because it is lonely, but we don't have to do it alone. I can stay connected to other people, run it by, get some perspective, and then come back with new ideas for the team, because it's not a good thing to just be alone. It gets all weird.
Well, there you go.
That's a good one.
It's good to have, it's good to
Yeah.
have the community, and that falls on very many levels, and to have that mentor mentee relationship with somebody, I mean, that's huge, I think. And I still consider myself to be younger in the higher ed AV sphere. So, even though I've been doing this for like 11 years, I still, I still look up to others, within our field, because I don't have all the answers, and I will probably never have all the answers. So I think that's an ongoing process there, Murphy.
Yeah.
I think we also live in fortunate times. I remember kind of pre-internet when there weren't groups, there weren't podcasts, and you're a silo. Even a lot of universities, they would only have maybe one AV person at the entire university. And man, it is a challenge to stay motivated and creative when you're the only voice around, having these mental kind of conversations about how you're going to improve things when you don't have a sounding board. So in some ways, I think we're more fortunate that there are so many groups, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or other platforms, where wherever your university is, at least you can reach out to somebody and say, hey, how are you doing it? You may not be doing it any better than I am, but at least how are you doing it? Sometimes it's fun to have that camaraderie of, hey, we all have made bad mistakes in the past. We have decided buy the wrong hardware or buy the wrong software or implement the wrong way. It's great to commiserate over those, but it sometimes is very rewarding when somebody else makes the mistake and you get to learn from their mistake. It's always a great way to, shave off some years from your career by just learning from others. But yeah, I think we live in a pretty awesome time in terms of AV in general, because wow, a lot of people want to share their information. They're happy to share it openly and freely without, any barriers. So in some ways, I think we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
it's-
definitely. Yeah. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
James Murphy.
Yeah, go ahead, Murphy.
To say it is nice that culture has been created and fostered, that we've been on the interwebs, open with each other and willing. And that's really great, because that's not always the case.
Oh yeah. I think especially AV, I think there are still certain facets of IT where they want to kind of keep things pretty close to their vest. But I think there are a lot of AV groups out there that are like, oh, you want you want a drawing from something I did? Sure, here you go. Oh, you want to see the program? Here's the program. If you, or the configuration, here you go. When I worked at my last university, we would collaborate with other universities in the area and just go through a building and say, hey, this is what we think. Take whatever nugget I just left there, and I'm going to walk away and go and do what you want to do. But we're happy to share our perspective. And I would say 4 or 5 of the universities were just like, thank you so much. We'd give them sketches, whatever it was. They're like, I don't think you're supposed to do this. And I think it's okay. Our CIO said, absolutely, give them whatever you want. In fact, here's 4 or 5 hours, go share with another university. So I love that.
I see nothing wrong with that at all, because why invent the wheel if, you can share your information, your experiences, you're saving them time. They might not have known because, you talk to your users as to how they're using the equipment, and they can go back and maybe they have questions, the proper questions to ask their profs or whoever's using it.
And Nancy, I would add one little piece to that is, I think if you're a really large university, you have a lot to learn from very budget-minded small universities, and it lets you kind of think about things in a different way, where normally we might buy the biggest, most expensive piece of equipment. Then we roll in and see a smaller, more nimble group that is, they've engineered their devices not out of just fun, but out of necessity, and they really get to the core of it. And maybe we don't always go in that direction, but it's great to see how they can stretch a dollar, and it allows us to kind of reevaluate where we are. So I think there's a lot of, knowledge sharing in both directions, no matter how the conversation goes.
Right.
Oh, higher ed is definitely about that. I mean, if you look at HEPMA, that's all we're about. We're all about sharing. And even that's one of the benefit of the Slack group I run. And I'll tell you, I've been reached out by different manufacturers who would love to be a fly in the wall because they know the candid conversation we're having. And we do have very candid conversations because we are, as Joe I don't want to drop his name, but I'm going to drop his name. As Joe has said, our universities may be competitors for students, but Tim and I are not competitors, even though we work for different universities. We're colleagues. We're not co-workers, but we're colleagues. So we're going to share and help each other. The way I do things is going to be different than Tim. He's going to pull a nugget from me. I'm going to pull from a nugget from him. But ultimately, our goal is to educate our students. If it's at Rutgers, if it's at UNLV, if it's at USC, students are going to go to schools where they feel they're going to get their best education. We're just providing the tools to give them that education. So if we can get a little advantage from another university in that how they're doing it, we're going to do it.
Yeah, and I doubt you're going to have a student go, I was going to go to that university, but did you see the bezels on the TVs? I just can't go there. I'm going to go with my backup plan.
But on the flip side, having that piece, that one awe-inspiring video wall, or I think at Rutgers, I think our immersive synchronous lecture halls are the big thing. When you have those big showpieces, that's good to have. But yes, I don't think a student is going to go in there looking at the monitors and go hey, that looks really cool, but you know what, not quite my style.
No, I think, and I did not mean it this way, but it seems like it's going to be another segue to our topic. But yes, students are not looking at the AV or the technology and going, hey, this is cool, I want to go to school for this. But you know what? AV nightmares. If the technology is horrible and it impacts their education, that's going to hurt the university. And they're not going to go, oh, I don't like this university because, they're using brand Z. I don't like brand Z. They're going to go, I don't like this university because I'm not getting a value education. And it's because it could be us, the technology, and not the content. And that's where folks like Tim, myself, and these are us AV pros coming in hand and making sure that the technology is not it's a tool, not a burden to the education.
Exactly, not a burden of where the prof is wasting the majority of the class time trying to figure out how to get the equipment working, how to get it up on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing I ever heard is was listening to an episode, part of this media group, the Higher Ed AV, and it was talking with the I can't think of his name right now, but he was at West Point, and he was saying if a projector goes out in class, he's like, it may seem invaluable at that time, like insignificant, but that information that person could have saved a life on the battlefield 5-10 years down the road. Like, just because that projector went out, that could have been vital information that the cadet needed to use down the line. And yeah, I mean, we're not dealing with lives here. We're not dealing with cadets, but I mean, I'm in a medical school. My students are going to be doctors. That if say the colors are wrong and they can't tell the difference between a cancer tumor and a non-cancer tumor, that's a problem. This is education they need to learn. Or if the display goes out and they didn't learn about that part of the body and now they need to face it in real life, it could be effective. I mean, Tim, you're more of general, like you do business and you have a lot more than just medical, but again, business people, like think about that, is even finance, like if they're in class and the display is not working, they may learn what they may not fully understand what a account payable is, and now mess that up in books.
Right, and like you have other pieces like even the assisted listening devices and things like that that help those students who have disabilities. Like that's sort of, those nightmares can't happen. Like those are like the ones that they have to work. Like 100% of the time they have to work. Whoever you happen to be using as your provider for that. So yeah, I get it. Like, you know, it's, and I think the one thing that I have to struggle with, because we're general purpose, is meeting the needs of all these different classes. That's the true nightmares, because what works for chemistry doesn't necessarily work for physics, which doesn't necessarily work for business, which doesn't necessarily work for communications. Like it's, you know, you've got all these different classes, and then that's a lot of pieces to keep up and running, depending on where you find the usage to be.
I agree, because that was my challenge back at my old school. Was we were liberal art university, and we the same thing. Like this one room, it could be a math class, and the one right after it is biology, and the one right after that is business, and the one right after that is fine arts. But the technology has to fit all their needs.
Yep. And then also trying to provide standards across the entire university, which is a whole nother thing, because then you also have from one side of the university to the other. You could go from, for instance, the liberal arts over on the Livingston campus all the way over to Cook Douglas, which has all the agricultural programs. So you're literally filling everything in between those two. And yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I have admit. It seemed interesting when I was at my old university, is there wasn't real, I mean, there were your outliers, but majority, there wasn't location that says this is business wing, a building or wing, and this is arts, and this is health. It was in one wing, you could have a business and an art together. And even the faculty, their offices were like that. And the reason for that was to cross talk to each other. So, you know, you build community, and you may get onto a project together and work together. And that art student is bringing their expertise, and the business students are bringing their expertise, and come together and, you know, come up with cool projects. And I thought it was a cool concept.
So yeah, so those are some of the nightmares. Those are the things that keep us up at night a little bit.
Yep.
What what other nightmares do we have out there? I know we talked about some last week, but I know we have books of them that I'm sure we could share.
Yeah.
What about you, Richard?
You know, where do you start? Like honestly, most of the AV nightmares, there are a lot that I have had very little impact on, but one that I will own, and I created my own nightmare, was this is in the early days of online streaming. We were using Adobe Connect. Remember when Adobe Connect was red hot for a while? And we were doing a hybrid session, and I thought I had fully vetted this system. And of course, at the last minute, they're like, instead of 2 guests, we're going to have 4 guests. Is that going to be a problem? And I was like, well, we don't have any equipment for this. So it's like, do you mind sharing mics? And I felt like, you know, the one-man band trying to, you know, I'm filming, running audio, and I'm also kind of the AV host, getting everyone prepped and set. And there was a funny kind of bug with Adobe Connect where the audio would drift in the recordings significantly. And I'm not talking like microseconds or milliseconds, like half a second or more. So we pull this recording at the end of it, and I had also captured some great audio, and I'm like, this is going to be easy. It's going to slap the high quality audio on the guest audio, and it's going to work perfectly. And at the end, it was just a garbled mess. And there was nowhere to go with it, nothing to do. It was just a nightmare event. And it really wasn't like the technology. It was just a lot of variables shifting dynamically and not being fully prepared. So what I learned from that nightmare was even if there is like a project manager or an event manager, I owned all of the technical management of events from that moment forward. I told myself I'd never let that happen again. And there were, since then, you know, I had multiple events where there was a very competent event coordinator, but I would walk in with a long list of questions that probably prompted a lot of the events to run quite a bit smoother than they would have otherwise, because I was going in saying, where are the people going to physically be 5 minutes before the start of the event? Can I lob them at these locations? Does anyone have a pacemaker? Which I have a horror story about that as well, where somebody's pacemaker went off during a live event and caused feedback into the room because it disrupted the RF frequency. Anyway, so I asked a lot of questions. I always require a timeline whenever there's an event, who's speaking first, who's speaking second, etc. And it's shocking that there are multiple events that I was running where it's like, well, we're not sure who's talking first. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know who's going to be talking first? Who's introducing the guest speaker? That's a great question. And you know, an hour before the event. So yes, that was one of my nightmares, and I probably learned a lot from it. Luckily, it was just kind of not a throwaway event, but it was kind of a, you know, one of those events that's critically important, and then like 2 weeks later, nobody talks about it ever again. One of those kind of important events, but luckily it wasn't a big one, but I definitely learned a lot from that event.
Oh yeah, no, and I could attest to that as well, for at least being here on the podcast. You know, I learned a lot of things in those first couple months that I was running things here, and how to manage things, and how to get into a rhythm of things, and how to make sure guests are ready for the show, and having to deal with how things may get off the rails, even though I still let things get off the rails, but there's sometimes you have to stay on point.
I think that's the best thing from AV Nightmare. We can take anything positive from AV Nightmares is when you learn from them. I mean, And again, like Richard said, I'd own this mistake. It was a pretty big mistake. I own it. I learned from it. It never happened again. But I took down the AV network during orientation. That's my old university. We had orientation going, and I was at a remote site, and I was swapping out gear, and I was like, I need to. I had the gear, the temporary gear hooked up. I knew if I hooked up the new gear the same way, I was going to cause a network issue. I took steps to prevent it. I put the new gear in, and right away I knew what happened. My phone was blowing up. I had to solve within like 30 seconds to a minute. But in that time, audio cut out where the students were for orientation. And it caused havoc. Again, 30 seconds to a minute, they were fully back, fully operational. But like I said, right away, I was like, all right, I know never to do that again, and never to swap equipment during orientation.
Did
Even
any of the
if it's
students
not in the same room.
Well,
did any of the students just stand up and walk out like, okay, this place has horrible AV. I'm out of this university.
That's
The
it.
other, I'm going to the backup university. Sorry, I can't. I'm not going to deal with this.
Not that I'm aware of, but also to go with that notion, I had the person who was on the mic at the time. I apologize about the whole issue, and she's like, "Don't worry." She's like, "I was at and she named a big university in New Jersey, where the same thing happened, and it took them 2 hours to recover."
Ooh.
Yeah, I was gonna say that 30 seconds was a quick turnaround because not everyone's
Yeah,
gonna get that.
that's right.
That's impressive.
Well, it's like anytime that you have a handheld lav that like drops for 1 second during a live event, like I'm shocked that everyone in the audience doesn't hear it, but I hear it. And it's like you subtly go into panic mode going, is it going to do it again? Or is this, you know, the tip of the iceberg of some major calamity that's about to happen? And I obviously I do not miss my live event days one bit, because I mean, when you're doing video production, somebody flubs a line or whatever, it's fine, nothing happens. But live events, something goes wrong and you get 400 heads turning around, and you're the one person in the back. You get the laser focus of hundreds of people.
Oh yeah.
Besides like AV nightmares, I would also love to bring up cursed AV spaces. I feel like
that falls
like 5 identical rooms, but we know room 301, there's some kind of haunted something going on, some paranormal activity, and
some gremlins.
Yes.
Those gremlins getting into the systems again. Yes. I'm very familiar with those. But also going real quick back to, I want to go down that. I want to go curse spaces, but also live events. Working in higher ed AV has ruined me on live events outside of work.
Yes.
Because now I go to weddings, I go to theater shows, you know, whatever it might be. And something goes wrong with the mics, something goes wrong with a video, a projector or something like that. My son got invited to a bowling party about 1.5 years ago, and it bothered me because there was overlap of the projectors because they weren't aligned properly. And yeah, I know, little things. It's like little things like that. And it's like, if this was my place, I wouldn't allow that to happen. Like, and it's ruined me. Like, it just sticks with me now wherever I go. And that to the point too where my wife is like, "Are you gonna? You're not working. Don't do this." I'm like, "Well, I can't help it. Like, it's just part of me now. Like,
it is.
I've assimilated it."
Yeah, I got yelled at by a friend of mine because we took our daughters to a women's national team friendly at Red Bull Arena. So this was the U.S. women's national team playing a game. I think they were playing Mexico. I forget exactly what team. But I was staring at the LED ticker across the arena because they had a panel out. And it bugged me. And my friend's like, "You're here to watch the game." But I'm like, "They have a panel out." I'm like, "I would not allow this." "But you're here to watch the game." I'm like, "But no, they have a panel out."
I paid good money for this game. How dare they have one of these
Yeah.
panels out?
Yeah.
Well, that happened to me at the at Yankee Stadium this year. We went out there, and they had different squares at different color saturations on the big jumbotron, and I'm like, you're the Yankees. Like, why? Like, that shouldn't happen. Like, or at least take the time to like move those squares to like other sections, like where they're not like right in the middle of Aaron Judge's face. It's like, and congratulations to Aaron Judge on 62 home runs. Way to go. Now the Yankees need to show you the money, so I hope they do that. Just saying that. Anyway, but yeah, it's like, it's little things like that, and that's pro sports on any level.
But
and
that's
any
the thing
sport.
is, we pick it up because we know better. The average person does. Another situation, same thing. I was at an event looking at a display, and I noticed that some pixels were out. So it had the pink line on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to somebody, and they're like, "Oh man, that's a great display." I'm like, "No, they have pixels out." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I pointed it out to them, and they're like, "Wow, now that's all I can see." Like, they didn't see the whole event until I pointed it out to them, but I picked it up right away.
Well, I think it expands into like obviously audio as well, where you go into a restaurant or a bar and it's like they clearly didn't, nobody had a good understanding of the audio in here. Putting two massive speakers near the bar so everyone's deaf there, and then 25 feet away they can't hear anything. It's just maddening. And I'm sure if they would have taken the cost of those two huge speakers and just broken it up into a distributed audio, so it would have sounded so much better, and you wouldn't be screaming at people. And it just, the audio is too loud, so people start talking louder, and then they start turning up the volume to hear the music, and by the end you're an older guy like me shaking your fists at the speakers and judging with my judging audio eyes. But it's it's just so frustrating.
What about you, Nancy or Murph? What are your nightmares for you guys?
Well, as a manufacturing rep, I saw one that I cannot speak about here in Silicon Valley, and it was just unbelievable. And it was the consultant who designed it, and a large integrator went in and saw a whole bunch of issues, and so said, this has to be changed. The client went back to the consultant said, absolutely not, it's staying as it is. So the integrator had to install it as it was, and was apologizing to the client saying, "I am so sorry, this is just killing me right now having to do this." I mean, it was like in a great big meeting room where it's all glass, and what do? You put this where you installed the screen, so if the sun came in, you can't see anything because it's all washed out. They had these long hanging microphones in a small room, of which the ceiling was low. So it just, there was a projector that was installed in front of a pole. So how the heck are you supposed to see what's being projected? And it was just things like that. That was my experience. Wow. And I mean, it went on from there. It just went on and on.
Working in the hardware manufacturing, it is heartbreaking when, and you have great engineers working on, trying to make wonderful products, and then they are installed in the most inappropriate way possible. And it's like, why does this sound bad? And it's like, it was never intended to be used in this application. You know, of
Yeah.
course it's going to sound bad. And, you know, it is humbling to see the decisions that some people make, unfortunately. And literally, if they would have just gone to the website and read through the, you know, the documentation of what the product is intended for and the use case, et cetera, or just picked up the phone and called, but we would have told them really quickly,
Yeah.
like, this is a perfect application for it, or this
Yeah.
is, you know, just today somebody had a specific project and I was like, we're not the company you want to be talking to. You need to be talking to this other company. That's exactly what they do. And our product just doesn't fit into that configuration. And the last thing I want to do is have them try because it's not going to work. And it's just really, I've seen a couple of those similar situations where it's like, this project was doomed from the beginning. Like the nightmare started when they started putting the equipment in.
Well,
I
and
think
that's nice
when-
that, and that's nice, you know, Richard, that you're preventing a nightmare from happening to somebody else as well. So you knew that your product didn't do what it was supposed to, what they thought it was going to do, and you stopped it. You know, because I'll be honest, there have probably been some sales reps out there who have gone and said, "Yeah, go ahead, it'll be fine," and then, you know, that's been a nightmare I've had to deal with a manufacturer that I shall not name, and the consultant swore up and down that it was going to work, and they designed it out. The manufacturer was involved. We got it installed, couldn't get it to work reliably at all. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then we pulled all the equipment out and they went, "Well, why did you do that?" I'm like, "Because it doesn't work." And we never went back to that manufacturer again, but that's unfortunate.
I think there's wiggle room with some of the things, you know. Oh, if the spec mic is spec for 8 feet and you go to 9 or something, I think there's always a little bit of wiggle room, but then there is like order of magnitude way outside. And I've seen some of those situations, and it's like, you know, it's tough. And I feel for other hardware manufacturers when their name is on the touch panel and it's not their problem, it's something else. And it, you know, it sometimes it all just kind of gets bundled up. And yeah, I've definitely seen things where, you know, why doesn't this sound correct? Or what, you know, we expected it to sound better. And it's like, you know, the person that configured this never went in and changed the default configuration. Like they never tuned it for a room, or they never, it's like, here, let me just drag these 2 things and put a block in here. And all of a sudden they're like, "Well, so you fixed it." And I was like, "No, I just made it do what it was originally intended to do." So
I want to go back to what Nancy was saying, that what it was good and bad. Like, so the integrator was actually doing a good thing and trying to be good by their client, and the consultant was the bad guy here. But I don't know how many times I've actually dealt with a consultant or an integrator who knows it's wrong, but they go, "But that's what the drawings call for." I don't care what the drawings call for. If you know it's wrong, don't do it. I actually had a conversation back at my old university with Paul, or looking at,
Like, do you always follow your GPS that same way? Do you run off cliffs?
some people do, sadly.
Yeah.
But
if it
it's
says
like,
drive into a lake, I'm doing it.
I was saying, didn't you watch The Office? Like
Yes.
that's where the road is. It's like, no, Michael, that's not where we're supposed to go. Anyway.
God forbid we be Michael. Go ahead, James.
Yeah.
oh no, I was just, like I said, I was looking at blueprints of a building we were doing a couple of years ago, and I was doing security cameras at the time. And I'm looking, I'm like, I'm telling my boss, I'm like, the cameras can't go here. And he's like, "Why not?" I'm like, "Because the pillars are in the way." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, they're supposed to look at these doors and it won't because the pillars are there." And he's like, "Oh, wow, no one else caught that." I mean, now, granted, I know a lot of that has to do because a lot of times you're looking at 400 pages of drawings, so you miss a lot. But it's like people who are, you know, when you're designing and putting gear in a room that's supposed to do multi-function, you can't put a gear that can only do one room. Like it's common sense, but people don't do that.
Mm.
You know, I'm trying to think about what AV nightmares I've had, and they're all, I'm going back to like vintage things. Like this, it doesn't even make sense to talk about all the times when I've had to deal with ISDN lines that were fished, but or you know, reassigned to a different long distance carrier, like all that, lots of history in that. But then I think, wait, these ones are still applicable. When I'm trying to help facilitate a service call and you're trying to like read what it was, like, what is here? What is here? What are we doing? And then try to like reverse engineer what the heck happened. And this is why I am finishing my chapter in the AV Project Management Handbook, soon to be available, where I talk about keeping the records of each project so that service calls will make more sense, so that people can go out and actually do, because it's going to be you. At least you hope it is. Either you've got a contract or you've got a T&M that they're going to call you back,
Yep.
the customer, and you want that to be done quickly because those people are valuable on site. So going, what the heck is this? And try to go, who did this before? What were they thinking? And try to figure out what to do to make it work again. Like,
I actually have a phrase for that. It's called an AV archaeologist. And it's like, you try to figure out, how did the system get to this point? And, you know, you might even have a drawing.
Have this technology. Is it
Right.
completely extinct?
And it, you know, you've got like a drawing that's 15 years old or 12 years old,
If you're
and
lucky.
clearly like a control processor failed at some point, and they swapped it out for a new one, or an amp failed, or they added some kind of lecture capture thing, and you kind of have this Frankenstein kind of system. And, you know, usually it's multi-generational. They've updated a piece or two along the way.
Right.
And then you've got to kind of decipher what happened. And it's a fun game if it's not your project or not
time.
your,
Yeah.
if you don't have to
Indiana
service
Jones.
it, it's awesome. It's fun. Like, oh my gosh, you know, they were running old, like 5 cable trunks of copper all over the place. Wow. And then they clearly must have updated it, but they didn't update everything, just parts of it.
Yeah.
I find it a fun game to play, but not on my systems. It's funner when
Right.
you don't have any skin in the game on that one.
So
Yeah, that's why I always liked. Oh, go ahead,
go
James.
ahead. No, you go, Tim.
I was that's why I always like taking over spaces, like, because you go to find out, and yeah, like you said, it's like an archaeology dig. Like you're digging through the rack and you're like, oh, what is in here? And then you go, oh, it's a TOA amp. It's like,
Is that a scaler? Okay, all right, right, you know, a composite scaler. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
and I was saying we just
Mystery
took
box.
over. Yeah, it could
How
be
our
anything.
forefathers did it.
But
Well, we just took over, like, I guess you could say it was a very first generation active learning room, because all the tables had computers and they all had connections to their local monitor, and then you could share from the main computer at the front of the space, but everything was done over VGA.
oh,
And I went, I almost puked a little bit, like in my mouth. Like it was just one of those situations, like, and we didn't have the budget. This just was this summer. We didn't have the budget to do like the full overhaul that we had to. So I went out, I found like VGA to USB-C cables, and even one of our technology support specialists, the supervisors, he came up to me and he goes, why are you buying VGA cables? I'm like, I'm just trying to make it work until the next budget year. I'm like, that's all I'm trying to do.
yeah. But I mean, I had this saying I've always told people, I've actually expanded it to documentation as well, to kind of prevent some of this stuff. You really used it for rack builds and wiring up what racks. And I always told student workers, the guys I've hired, I was like, you need to wire up a rack as if the person who's coming behind you is an insane serial killer who will hunt you down and kill you if you frustrate them. Because 99% of the time, it's you coming in the back. And it's true. And that's how I try to tackle everything is I don't want to piss myself off. So how can I do this so I don't piss myself off?
Well, it's I do appreciate, now I'm not a programmer, but I do appreciate programmers that leave comments within their program, because at least then you understand like the logic that was going into it. I know it doesn't happen often, but you know, I've seen code and you see that.
I'm worse at that. And I'm the programmer here and I'm horrible at that. I'm starting to do that now where I'll leave comments and stuff. But a lot of times I'll look back at my comments and be like, what the hell does that mean? Sorry.
Well, sure.
Or do you leave eggs, James? Do you leave Easter eggs in there?
Yeah, I've left Easter eggs.
A little apology to your future self.
Yeah. Or you get some people who leave saying in there like Spaceball sayings or things like that.
Yeah.
You'll find
that's
those
awesome.
in there.
Inconceivable. No, that's not Spaceballs, but anyway. That's what I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about like, you know, words and using phrases you don't understand. I was like, I'm all Princess Bride over here, just trying to, you know, not try to stay on target. All right. Well, those are some definitely big nightmares there. I've definitely been in those classrooms, and I hope that we can all learn from these nightmares and not have any more, or to have very few of them.
I just wonder how they get to that. Like, again, I've designed systems and, you know, took great pride in making kind of laying everything out the right way. And sure, it didn't always hit perfectly, but you know, I've definitely seen kind of a wave of maybe slightly neglected systems that it's probably they had a technician for a year or two, that technician leaves, another one comes in, they patch, and over 2 or 3 little patch generations, you end up with a Frankenstein of, you know, HDMI being converted into VGA for the core of the system. Then on the other end, you're converting it again. And I think it's a double-edged sword where it's the technicians allowing it to happen, and then the administration also permitting it to happen, where they don't step in and say, you know, it's time for us to properly fund. You know, it's fascinating that buildings, when you build a building, they have a calculation to build to essentially establish how many custodial staff that you need for the building based on square footage. It's like you build a building, you have to keep it clean. This is how you do it. You need 2.5 people there, and you move on. But with AV, it's just kind of, it's not necessarily like that. And a lot of places don't have a budget dedicated to it, and they don't have a cycle, and they don't have standards. So it just kind of, it gets away from
I know we started talking about this a little bit when you were on last time, Richard. We need to bring in some bigger guns into talk about those calculations, and see if we can come up with the AV math that goes along with that.
But to answer Richard's question, how this happens, I have 2 words: value engineer.
Oh,
those are my favorite words. I love that.
I think I died a little bit there. That's a nightmare. That's a true nightmare. I was like, oh, why does this monitor have RS-232 control? Value engineering. You got a consumer grade monitor. It's like, that's why.
Why do we have 2 projection screens and only 1 projector? Well, you know, that's what happened. Sorry.
Yep. Oh man, that's the true nightmare. Value added engineering or value engineering. So Well, I think that's gonna that's gonna do it for our nightmares tonight. I can't have any
I hope
more
I
of
can
this. Or else
sleep.
yeah, I know that's the problem. We've been talking about this now. It's gonna bother me now when I go to bed, and I need to
See,
sleep. I
now
need
I'm
to.
thinking of even more, but I'm refraining because even I don't want to remember them.
I
That's
think
all right, Murphy.
like
We still.
you mentally block pain. So I
Mhm.
don't remember most of the true AV nightmares, thankfully, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Well, we still have a couple more episodes for October, so I'm sure there'll be more that surface to the top here. Um, and yeah, so Richard, hey, thank you again for coming in. We hope to have you back. You've been great with us here, so I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely. And it's been great to meet everyone and get to know you a
Yeah.
little better.
Yeah, it is. Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. And to my crew, thank you very much for joining us. Oh, Richard, I don't know, did you give your little like where people could find you? I know you're the AV miser now
I
on
am
Twitter.
on Twitter at AV Miser. I'm not a prolific tweeter. Is that it? No, tweeter. Anyway,
A tweeter? Yeah.
uh, anyway, yeah, but you can also email me, richard.mitchell@biamp.com, and always love to chat with people. I'm going to be at it'll probably land after this, but I'm going to CCUMC this year and Educause just to kind of check them out.
Cool.
So if
Yeah.
anyone's there, I'd love to see you.
Yeah, Hetmo will be having Hetmo will have a little bit of attendance at I think both of those events. I know CCUMC we're going to make an appearance, and I'm not sure about Educause. James, could you?
Yeah, I'm not sure about Educause. I know there's been talks about it on the back end,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I can't recall if anyone's actually going or not.
Yeah, I can't. I know CCMC we're going to be there, so
Yeah.
look for our Hetma folk there as well.
Yeah.
And look for some really cool things to come in your way from Hetma in the next couple weeks. So
Can you not
stay
please
tuned
tell
for.
us a hint?
Nope.
Nope.
I
Nope.
saw that.
Yes, I know. It's all exciting things. So it's good. It's all good things, all exciting things. We're changing some things around a little bit within higher ed AV media as well. So if you're interested in sponsoring the AV life and the website as a whole, please feel free to reach out. We'll get you in touch and get you signed up as one of our sponsors. I'm going to call it quits there because I think my voice is telling me I need to do that. So thanks for listening in, and until our next adventure.